Good evening, everyone. I have time to start, so it's 5:30 Central, 6:30 Eastern Time. I'd like to welcome everyone here again this evening for our ninth and final webinar in the Fall 2020 Master Bee Producer webinar series. Again, I'm going to go through the similar introduction that I have given for the previous webinars, and then I'll introduce our speaker, and then we'll get started and leave him with plenty enough time to get through his presentation. So one thing to remember here is that, again, want to re-emphasize the fact that University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture is a member of the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. And within that, the other partner members of the Roundtable, we've been able to start working with Golden State Foods and Nestle. They've provided us with support to actually test and evaluate the sustainability metrics that they use. And I've mentioned in some of the previous introductions that if you haven't already, I'd encourage you to go to the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef's website, look at their sustainability information. And if you've followed the discussion on sustainability, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with what you find there, because that group was organized and has had the objective throughout its work so far for the last few years to make sure that all players in the beef production chain have a voice in talking about sustainability and measuring our sustainability and looking at it from not just an environmental impact, although that's a very important part of it, but also from a generational sustainability perspective, like we talked about on generational transition in a previous webinar, and economic sustainability, profitability, those kinds of things all go into this. And so we're really glad to be a part of that group, glad to partner with Golden State Foods and Nestle within the roundtable to look at the metrics that they have for measuring basically how sustainable you are. I think we all have an idea that we have some measure of sustainability in the way we produce beef cattle, but being able to measure it and show it and then make improvements on that continually is a very important part of it. And specifically for us here in Tennessee, one of our objectives is to have you as a Tennessee cow-calf producer or stocker operator or feeder or whatever the case may be, have you prepared to respond to market drivers that are willing to give more value to your cattle if you can show that they're produced in a sustainable way that they likely to some degree already are, and then continuing to improve that. So we want to have a competitive advantage in the marketplace, and that's part of our objective here as well. So again, we're glad to work with US Roundtable. And again, I just encourage you, if you haven't had an opportunity to go to their website, look at their training modules. There's a lot of good information there, and I think you'll get a lot of good out of it yourselves. I'll remind you that I'll be asking a few questions. We don't have Courtney with us tonight, so I'm going to be running the poll questions. So whenever I pull up one of these poll questions, like you see an example of here on your screen, if you're on the web browser platform, you won't be able to interact with that question, but Courtney will send you a follow-up link and you can answer these questions on the survey. But if you're interacting on your phone, actually on the app on your smartphone or on the desktop application, you'll be able to click and answer on those poll questions, and then it'll be anonymous whenever I reveal the distribution of the answers, but Les will be able to look at that. We'll be able to see that and kind of gear the discussion toward it as we go. And again, being a webinar platform, we don't see your video, don't hear your audio. You're just seeing us and hearing us. But if you'd like to ask us a question, of course, we have the chat function, the chat box you can type some information into. When you do that, it goes to us, the panelists. But if you want to ask a question, if you'll click the Q&A box and ask that question, everybody can see that and can see the answers that I type in. I'll be watching that as we go, as Les gives his presentation tonight. And then I'll just kind of put those questions together, and we'll have Les and I'll have a discussion at the end, mostly based on your questions there. So I've mentioned Les a couple of times, so I'm really excited to have Les Anderson with us here for this final webinar this evening. Les and I actually at work together. That's been several years ago now, I guess, Les, probably more than I want to admit. But actually, I did my master's degree at the University of Kentucky, and Les was my major professor there, and that was early, I guess, in your tenure at the University of Kentucky, Les. But definitely, I'm glad that I got in there. And actually, if there's a reason that I'm an extension beef cattle specialist, and if there's anything I know about beef cattle reproduction, most of that's Les's fault, is the way I would say it. So, Les, not only does he study this and has a background in education in at Ohio State and Missouri, but he also just does a lot of it. And I took a lot of those cues from Les too, just learning how he did a lot of field research. And a lot of what he'll end up talking to us tonight is not just theory. He'll be talking to us about the actual application of it. And that's what we do as extension specialists. And he does it in a big way on a lot of cattle throughout Kentucky. And we work together doing research projects and those kinds of things. So again, just really happy to have Les here and talking to us about mostly management of postpartum cows and getting them bred back, but he'll end up talking a whole lot because of the nature of that management about managing the breeding season. Okay, Les, I'm going to turn it over to you if you're good to go.
I'm good to go. Thanks for the introduction. And just as soon as
somebody asked me if I had any jokes ready, so Courtney has been telling jokes whenever we ask the poll questions, but I did not prepare those. So,
well,
unless you know any good ones, we'll when you come to it.
Yeah, I'll have plenty when I get to it. Do you see my screen all right?
Yep, you're good.
Do I need to share my video? Do you want everybody to see how ugly I am, or?
It just, if your bandwidth will handle it, it might help us stay engaged. I'm going to turn mine off so that it doesn't consume too much bandwidth, but it's your choice there.
Good deal. Well, it's great to be here. Great to be at Tennessee. Dr. Reinhardt and I have been extremely good friends for many, many years now. It's fun to get the opportunity to come down, and I say that, understanding that we're in video, but it's awesome to get a chance to speak to the Tennessee beef producers and I get a chance to talk about organizing the breeding season. And some of the stuff that we'll talk about tonight, I guarantee you that Justin has hammered the Tennessee beef producers for years on, and some of it is going to be a little bit different. And I can't wait to get to the different part because that's the part that kind of makes it fun. And there we go. All right, Dr. Reinhardt, question number 1.
All right, it should be up there, Les. Can you see it?
I sure do.
Okay, so I've got answers coming in, and this is where Courtney has been telling the jokes. Do you know any that we can tell?
Well,
600 folks. Never mind. Let me just stop us right there. So, like I said,
you know the story about the old bull and the young bull, right?
Oh, go ahead. That's cool.
Yeah, the old bull and young bull sitting on top of the hill looking down over the pasture. Cows in heat down there in the valley. Young bull looks at the old bull and says, "Hey, let's run down and breed one." Old bull says, let's walk down and breed them all."
There you go. A lot of wisdom in that. And that was the perfect timing because I think we've got most of our answers in. Just a couple still trickling in here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and end it there. And then I am going to share the results so you can see it. One thing I didn't do. See, everything falls apart when Courtney's not here. I didn't even read the question. Courtney's been reading the question and the answers. Everybody looks like everybody got it fine. But do you have an established breeding management plan? Yes or no? So it looks like 65%, 329 folks answered that yes, they do.
That's a little. You're doing a better job than me. That's a little higher than what we get when we poll our folks down here.
Well, and one thing that I'll say though too is that that this is a unique group. Producers, we've kind of, this is some of our more advanced, probably more progressive producers that would spend some time to come to a webinar like this. So that might be part of it.
Okay, so what Justin asked me to talk about is methods to improve reproductive activity, reproductive performance, or organizing your reproductive management plan. And I'm a list guy. I mean, Justin will tell you he worked with me for years. He's known me for probably 25 years, and I'm a list guy. If I don't make a list, honestly, I struggle getting stuff done. And so as I sit there and I was working on this presentation, I kind of looked at it as a list. And another way that I thought about it is reproduction really is kind of like a cake. And that sounds really odd, but if you stop to think about it, it's really very, very close to baking a cake. Now, I'm not a baker. I can cook a mean steak. I do a really good job on the grill or the griddle, but man, I'm not a baker. But I know if you're going to bake a cake, there's several things you need. You need some sugar, you need some flour, and so forth. You've got a list of ingredients, and not only do you need that list of ingredients, but you need them in the right proportions if you really want that cake to come out great. And that's kind of what we're dealing with tonight. I mean, and that's really what high reproductive rate is all about. You've got to have the right ingredients, and you got to have them in the right proportions if you want your cows to function at the highest rate possible. And so we're going to talk about that, and we're going to kind of check things off the list. We're going to talk about each one of those ingredients. I'm going to spend just a little bit of time on the stuff that I know Dr. Reinhardt has shared with you guys extensively, and then I'm really going to dive into the stuff that I'm kind of one of the things that I do the best, I guess. Number one, the first thing that you have to check off the list is you got to get breeding soundness exams done in your bulls. Okay, if you look at the oldest, the 2012 NOMS animal survey, less than 20% of beef cattlemen use the breeding soundness exams in their bulls. And I tell you what, if you're into risk, if you like to just roll the dice and see what comes up, let's do that. Let's just go ahead and turn the bulls out. We'll not do our breeding soundness exam. But if you want to kind of just check the list, if you want to make sure that you've got just a little bit of a chance to maximize reproductive potential, you're going to start with getting breeding soundness exams done in your bulls. Of all the things that I'm going to talk about tonight, this is the one that probably has the most direct impact on the ability of your cows to breed. And you're like, it's really not that important. Bulls have been getting cows bred for years and not getting breeding soundness exams. I deal with hundreds of farms in Kentucky a year. And that's not an exaggeration. Justin can tell you that's part of the way I do my job. And by far, the biggest reason for the biggest disasters is when people fail to get breeding soundness exams done in their bulls. Okay, and of course, it's a pretty simple tool. It's $50 to $100. And I hope that when we get through this, you're going to agree that it's probably worth your time to get that done about 30 days before the onset of each breeding season. 3 components to BSE, and again, I could spend an hour just on the breeding soundness exam. I'm going to try to do this in about 5 minutes. But the 3 components are scrotal circumference, physical exam, and of course the semen evaluation. That's how you do a scrotal circumference. Pretty simple. You wait for a 50-degree day, you pull the scrotum down from the body wall, you throw a little centimeter tape across the widest part, and right here, you take the measurement. This dude's 39 centimeters. Well, what's that tell you? Okay, what do we do with that information? Well, the first place we start is with our minimums. Okay, these are the minimum scrotal circumferences needed to pass a breeding soundness exam in the United States. Now, I'll just tell you a little story here, and Justin knows that I love to tell stories. We started the genetic improvement program in Kentucky about 20 years ago, 2000 to 2001, and that was where our tobacco settlement monies helped cost share the purchase of bulls with EPDs and bulls that passed a breeding soundness exam. I had a really good friend of mine, it was an ag agent in north central Kentucky, called me up one day and he's screaming, "This technician just passed these bulls and they got 27 centimeter scrotums. They can't be passing bulls with 27 centimeter scrotums. That's ridiculous. And of course, he was mad. When your friend gets mad, what do? You get mad, right? So I got mad with my friend. I called the president of KVMA to complain about this technician that was passing these bulls that had too small scrotums. And my friend, Dr. Prater is a great friend of mine, still a great friend of mine today. He starts laughing at me. I'm like, man, I said, what are you laughing at? He said, man, don't get so mad. I said, why? I said, this is a travesty. There's no way these bulls can be passing with 27 centimeter scrotums. He goes, Les, he goes, that's a recommendation. There's no scrotal circumference police. He goes, you got to do a better job of teaching people to select bulls with larger scrotums. And so that story is to this point. Bulls less than 15 months of age better be packing more than 30 centimeters, okay? And as that bull gets older, certainly the minimum to pass gets a little bit bigger. But what difference does it make? Why do we really care? I mean, who cares if they got a 27 versus a 47? Well, it all comes down to semen output and serving capacity. This data was collected on about 2,000 bulls. They were all British or continental breeds. It was published about 20 years ago, so it's not super recent data, but it's pretty important data. The goal of this research was to find the scrotal circumference where semen output and therefore serving capacity starts to become limiting in young bulls. Now, all these bulls were between 12 and 18 months of age, and they collected these bulls, measured the scrotal circumferences, and compared semen output of bulls with varying scrotal circumferences. Now, the one thing you got to know here is that semen output and serving capacity are very highly correlated. So as semen output goes up, serving capacity goes up. If we want to maintain our really low cost per pregnancy, we want our bulls to service as many cows as possible, right? And so serving capacity becomes really important to us. All right, now just looking at this graph, looks right here to me that the break would be 37 to 38. Again, at about that 15 to 18-month-old bull. But fortunately, we have statistics, and the statistics demonstrated that the line from 35 down was very steep, and the line from 35 up was pretty flat. Okay, and so this research demonstrated or suggested that bulls with yearling scrotal circumferences that exceeded 35 could have normal serving capacities for the rest of their life. And actually, if you wanted to push the envelope a little bit with some of these bigger bulls, you probably could. As important as that are these bulls down here with smaller than 35 centimeter scrotums. And in particular, when you get down here toward the minimum. Okay, here's the minimum to pass a BSE, that's 30. That bull produces 10% of the semen that a bull with greater than 44 centimeter scrotum has. Look down here at 27. I hope both cows they turned those bulls out with got pregnant. Not 100% sure they did. But we don't want to be playing down here. Unless you got one or two cows, doesn't matter. If you're wanting fine bulls that can get the job done and get cows bred quick, you better be playing on the right side of this graph and not on the left side. BSE also involves a physical exam, and that's simply where the technician looks at the bull, looks at his feet and legs, eyes, sheath, etc. Make sure that he has the physical ability to breed a cow, and he's not hindered by anything physical. He also, the technician should also take a health history. Okay, one thing to understand is that any illness that elevates body temperature for 2 degrees for 48 straight hours, so 2 straight days, will render a bull totally infertile for 2 months. 2 degrees, 2 days, kills all sperm. Okay? And so if they happen to get sick right before the onset of the breeding season, you could be in trouble. In addition to the physical examination, they evaluate their reproductive organs. And really what the technician is looking for is vesiculitis or some sort of abnormalities. But vesiculitis is a bacterial infection of the seminal vesicles. Okay, and so what happens is that the bacteria produces pus. The pus reduces conception rate up to 20%. You're like, well, okay, so it reduces conception rate, big deal. Well, so it takes us from 60 to 40. Well, 60% conception rate, you'll get 90% of your cows bred in 3 heats. 40% conception rate, it's 6. Okay, so you go from 3 heats, 60 days, to 6 heat, 120 days. It's a pretty big deal. Okay, so we want to make sure that our the bulls are clear of any abnormalities, and in particular vesiculitis. Of course, the bull will be collected, the semen will be evaluated, you'll get a morphology. So basically, what does the sperm cells look like? What do their tails look like? Are they abnormal? Are they normal? And then you get a motility estimate. Usually your morphology is going to be somewhere in that 70 to 90% range, and same thing with motility, somewhere in that 70 to 90%. You'll get a grade, so they'll either be satisfactory, which is self-explanatory, unsatisfactory, which is self-explanatory, or you'll get deferred. And a deferred classification normally means bring that dude back in 2 or 3 weeks. We'll test him again, see what happens. Sometimes the bull's kind of got to get his pipes cleaned out a little bit before he's capable of producing a really good sperm population with acceptable morphology. If you take the bull back and he is for the second time and he grades either deferred or unsatisfactory, my recommendation is to get rid of him. I've had too many experiences with people that have continued to take bulls back with deferred classifications, and it just honestly just doesn't work out very well. Okay, cut your losses, go ahead and give him a little bit of trailer mycin, if you know what I mean, and send him on down the road. Certainly, again, use bulls that only grade satisfactory, and we've already talked about that minimal scrotal circumference, but I wouldn't go be anywhere near 30 if it's a bull that I'm personally choosing. Unless you see your bulls breed every single cow every single time, and you know for a fact that that bull has not gotten injured in any way, shape, or form, I highly recommend that you get a BSC done 30 days before each breeding season, or once a year, depending upon what your breeding program looks like. The main reason is we can't predict failure, and it's our only risk management tool. It's the only thing we have that will tell us whether or not that bull can attempt to get the job done. BSEs are 100% in predicting totally infertile bulls. Not 100% in those marginally fertile bulls, but if a bull's shooting blanks, it'll tell us every single time that's the bull that really costs us a ton of money. Remember that any health issue that elevates the body temperature 2 for 2, 2 degrees for 2 days, can render a bull totally infertile for 60 days. And just a really common example, foot rot. If you treat it early, the data shows there's a 1 to 2 week reduction in fertility. If you allow it to linger, if you allow it to drift on more than 2, 3, 4 days, it renders a bull infertile for 2 months. And then injury is, I mean, are you positive he didn't get hurt? Are you positive that he didn't get the penis damaged in some way, shape, or form, or there's something that's going on that's hindering that bull's ability to breed cows? Okay. Hopefully we got that breeding soundness exam checked off the list. The next item we want to check off the list is we got to vaccinate. As part of one of our big programs here, and we're not very creative. We call it the farm program, you know. Really creative people up here. But anyway, as part of that farm program, we deal with several hundred farms a year, and it's amazing to me how many people fail to vaccinate their cow herd for abortifacients. And so I can't give a lecture on enhancing reproductive management without talking about and encouraging you to vaccinate your cows against abortifacients. We need to vaccinate our cows. This is not going to be a health management lecture. So again, we could spend an hour just on this, but I'm going to touch on it. We need to vaccinate our cows at least 30 days before the start of the breeding season. You need to vaccinate against the respiratory disease complex. So BVD, IBR, BRSV, so forth. BVD is the biggest cause of abortion in the state of Kentucky. By far. Biggest cause of abortion. If you can, we would prefer you to use modified live, because modified live virals absolutely stimulate a deeper, stronger immune response that lasts not their entire lifetime, but certainly gives them the opportunity to have a greater resistance to disease challenge for most of their life. Highly recommended modified live if you can. Lepto, including Harjo bovis. Vibrio is not really a huge issue up here, but we still vaccinate against it kind of for tradition's sake. And then, of course, I'm going to recommend that you boost, and we're going to look at that in just a second. But up here, we in these farms, we do a lot of very intensive data collection and management. If we don't do at least one boost for our abortifacients at weaning or at preg check, we lose pregnancies. And we spend a lot of time trying to get cows pregnant, and it seems a shame to get them pregnant, to check them pregnant. We know they're pregnant. They're pregnant by blood, pregnant by ultrasound, and then they come up not calving. Completely aggravating. When we pick this mid gestation booster up, we are able to reduce our incidence of abortion. We'll talk about that quite a bit as we get to the farms. Then, of course, deworm your younger and thinner cows. One of the things that I'm going to touch on when we get into the farm data is, okay, I vaccinated, but I'm still having problems with abortion. So things that I want to just kind of throw out at you, okay? If you've got deer, you're going to have problems with abortion. All right? Now, Justin, y'all may not have any deer down there. Don't know. My guess is you're loaded with them. All right? If your cattle are drinking groundwater, if your cattle have access to ponds, creeks, mud puddles, hoof prints, anything that a doe or a buck, doesn't have to be a doe, anything that a deer can urinate in that has either BVD or lepto, your cattle are going to have an opportunity to get it. One of the most fascinating things that I've heard in quite a while was a lecture by a veterinarian, Dr. Givens at Auburn. And Dr. Givens said that if urine, 1 milliliter of infected BVD urine is put into an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and a cow drinks 5 milliliters of it, which is just a small syringe of the pool water, she'll be infected with BVD, and it'll be enough to stimulate abortion. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you got deer or you got raccoons, 2 vectors for lepto and BVD, if you got them, you're going to have problems. If your cattle have access to groundwater where they can drink infected water, you could have issues. Okay, here right now to minimize our problems with abortions, we do at least 2 times per year vaccination. Typically, we'll do modified live pre-breeding, killed for the respiratory disease complex during gestation, and then of course we'll boost for lepto. I have one farm that has to vaccinate 4 times a year to keep from having huge issues with abortion. So we want to check that one off our list. Another ingredient for that fantastic reproduction cake that we have to make sure that this ingredient is correct is we got to evaluate the nutrient status of our cows, basically on a month-to-month production cycle to production cycle basis. We have to monitor body condition, manage body condition score of our cows constantly. And just to make sure that we're all on the same page, okay, 2 cows shown here. I'm going to start with the cow on the left. When I'm looking at body condition score, I start here at the ribs. If I can see ribs, and you can actually see all the way up to the forerib in this cow. If we have hot, sharp over the hook bones, sharp over the pin bones, or transverse and spinal processes, you can see those bones. You get up here in the shoulder, you can see shoulder definition. That cow's way too thin. Okay, if she is prior to calving, it's going to be 4 to 5 months before she recycles. Months. Okay, we got 2.5 months before we need to get them rebred to get them to calve on a 365-day interval. 4 to 5 months doesn't fit in that window. Okay, so if she's calving at a body condition score 3, her pregnancy potential in a 365-day plus or minus 30-day window is 0. Alternatively, if we've got this heifer over here, this first calf ever, both these are first calf evers. If we got the heifer over here, we're looking at her ribs, she's smooth. We get back up over her hook bone, she's smooth and covered, a little bit of fat here, a little bit of pone on the tail head. Certainly can't see the spinous or transverse processes. Nice and fleshy up here in the shoulder, got a little bit of fat in the brisket. This old gal is pushing a 6. Okay, she's going to be anestrus. If she's a 2-year-old, she'll be anestrus 60 or 70 days. If she's a mature cow, only 40 to 50, and your pregnancy potential on that gal is excellent. Okay, 2 main times we want to make sure that our cows are in body condition score 5 or 6 and not less than 5. 1 is pre-calving, and that's the most important. Okay, poor nutrition and low body condition score pre-calving increases calving problems. So many people up here, Justin, so many people think the man right before that cow calves, I got to cut off her nutrition so I can keep that calf smaller, make her calve easier. It's completely the opposite. All the data shows you increase calving problems by decreasing energy and protein pre-calving. You'll decrease calf health, you'll increase calf death loss. So here again, we worked really, really hard to get these cows pregnant, and then we got them to calve. But now, because we didn't manage their body condition score correctly, we lost the calf. Aggravating. Main thing from a reproductive standpoint is the lower the body condition score at calving, the longer it takes to get those cows to rebreed. Right after calving, cows go into anestrus and they will not cycle for somewhere around 60 days on average. But the shorter that period of time, the more likely we are to get those cows pregnant. We have to get them rebred in 80 to 85 days to maintain that 365-day window. And so we really need to work hard to make sure that we get those cows to calve in a body condition score 5 or greater. And I'm not going to lie to you, I like 6. Okay? If you really want to maximize reproductive efficiency, you're going to do 6. Once we get those rascals to calve, we need to try to do the best we can to maintain their body conditions. So if we get them to calve in a body condition score 5 or 6, we've got to do the best we can post-calving to maintain as much condition as is possible. If we get them in really good condition, but then we turn off the nutrients, we reduce milk production, we delay estrus slightly. Well, the main impact is we reduce conception rates. And again, it's been shown to be you can reduce conception rates as much as 20% by drastically decreasing nutrition from post-calving to breeding, okay? And so to maximize our reproductive potential, we need to make sure that we maintain body condition score and nutrient availability right after calving. Understand that that's not easy. Energy and protein requirements increase 25 to 30% after calving. Our goal is not to put weight on them, is simply to maintain body condition the best we can. Okay. Once we get this ingredient down, we get the vaccinations down, we're working on building a pretty good cake. We're baking that cake. Another really key ingredient to cake is preparing our replacements. Matter of fact, we do a really nice job with our heifers. Seems that a lot of problems with our cows kind of go away, okay? And so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about replacement heifer development. I know Dr. Reinhardt talks about this extensively, but I just want to touch on it. We got two main goals when we're developing heifers. Number one, and the most important thing you can do for a heifer and for her as her lifetime cow productivity is to get her bred as early as you can in the breeding season. This data was collected way back in the 60s and was reported in 1973. It was really one of the landmark reproductive management papers for beef cattle. And what these researchers demonstrated was that heifers that conceive early as yearlings during their first breeding season become programmed for more productive lives. So in other words, if they bred early in their first season, they were more likely to rebreed and breed early in subsequent seasons. And therefore, if they were always breeding early, they were calving early. And if they're calving early, they're weaning big calves. Okay? And so our first goal in our replacement heifer program is to get those rascals to breed early in their first breeding season. Funny thing, research, and this is just from Nebraska from about, 7 or 8 years ago, heifers that are born early are more likely to conceive early. And so as we are sorting through our heifers to determine which heifers we're going to keep the ones that are born early, because heifers that are born early in their own calving season are more likely to conceive early and therefore more likely to become more productive and more profitable cows. And what this is Rick Funston's data out on Nebraska. He just divided the calving period up into 3 20-day periods. Pre-breeding weight was heavier. Percent of the heifers that were cycling at the start of the breeding season was higher, and pregnancy rates were higher for heifers that calved early in their own calving season. A couple of things that we can do to influence heifers that coming into heat early and getting bred early. And one thing is breed. Okay, we can choose which breed we breed our animals to, which breed our animals are from. Age of puberty, which is really what dictates that early conception, okay? Age of puberty is highly correlated with milk production. And so typically breeds that milk more go through puberty a little bit earlier. So if you look at the British breeds, Angus and Shorthorn, milk more than Herefords, go through puberty earlier than Herefords. In our continental breeds, the Simmies and Gelbies, milk a lot. And those suckers go through puberty really early, sometimes a little bit too early, just to be honest about it. And in particular, if you compare those to Charolais, Limmies, and Keys, much earlier ages of puberty. Eared cattle. So anything that of course is the industry term for anything with a little bit of Brahman in it. Eared cattle can have problems with age of puberty. Purebred Brahmins go through puberty at 24 months of age, so at 2 years of age. Every time you take a little cut of ear out of them, so Brangus, Beefmaster, so forth, they'll get a little bit younger in age of puberty. But if you're running heavy Brahman, and I'd say half or better, you better watch age of puberty, okay? Because it could become an issue. Now, the main thing we can do as far when it comes to breed is crossbreed. The main benefit of crossbreeding is the increased productivity and longevity of the female, of that crossbred female. That's the reason. If you just look at the benefits from steer productivity, you're only looking at 8%. But over the long term, the advantages of crossbreeding is 24%. And most of that comes from the younger age of puberty, the earlier conception, and the greater productivity and longevity of that crossbred female. Very important. If you're implementing a breeding program to maximize the breeding potential of your heifers, the crossbreeding is something that you highly consider. They're younger at puberty, they breed early, and the data demonstrates they become more productive cows over their lifespan. We can also control weight. Heifers reach puberty when they hit about 65% of their mature weight. We call that the target weight. Now, if any of you guys have read Beef Magazine and a lot of these other things here lately, you'll notice that there's been some research that says we can push that all the way down to the low 50s. Not in this world. Not in Kentucky. We've tried it. It don't work. Dr. Reinhardt, I'm pretty sure you can, you'll agree with me on this. Doesn't work. Very recent data from Illinois. Guess what, Justin? Doesn't work.
Yeah, and usually what I talk about is the fact that approach was developed in the West and Midwest, where they have a little bit different environmental factors to overcome for feeding through the winter and those kinds of things. But it's really hard to catch them up and get them in the condition they need to be by the time they calve the first time.
Can't get her done. It can't. It's not. It just doesn't work here. Tried it.
We tried it. Yeah, we tried it here too. A couple of different ways.
Yep, we can't get them to cycle. So anyhow, I'm still sticking with that 65% for my target weight. My target date for those rascals is 1 month before the breeding season. So I want them to hit their target weight 1 month before the breeding season. 1 month before the breeding season, we're going to vaccinate them again. I'm going to use modified live for my BVD, that respiratory disease complex. We're going to vaccinate them for Vibrio and Lepto. I'm going to deworm them, and then I'm going to prepare them. I'm going to manage them for calving ease. Understand the young cow account for most calving problems. Okay, data from 40 years ago now, which really makes me seem old because this is when I was in graduate school, seems like. But anyhow, data from back in the late 80s and 90s demonstrated that females, and this is it, the 2-year-olds in particular, that experience calving problems are 16% less likely to conceive during the breeding season. Now, when I was at home, I grew up in Missouri on a large commercial cow-calf operation there, and we had Baldies and Herefords and Angus that we got us some Continentals, by golly, you know. We got us some Simmental, we got us some Gelvies, and we're going to make those calves bigger. Well, you know what you did back in the 70s when you did that? You learned how to pull calves. Okay? And you'll also learn how difficult it is to get cows rebred after you use a jack to crank one of them rascals out. 16% less likely to conceive during the breeding season. The data shows that for every hour that a cow is in stage 2 labor, so that's hard labor, contracting, pushing labor, takes her 4 days longer to recycle. Okay? So I like to get those rascals out in 90 minutes if we can. Okay? And we need to manage for calving ease as best we can, because that is really going to directly impact the rebreeding potential, particularly of our young cows. One thing that I like to get done here a month before the breeding season, we'll do a pelvic area measurement. I typically use the rice pelvimeter. We'll measure the vertical and horizontal, multiply those two numbers together. Okay, so like if we got a 15 by 12, it's 180. I use this conversion factor that Gene Deutscher developed back in the 80s. Okay, so normally we're measuring the yearling heifers somewhere in that 600 to 900 range. I'm just going to pick 800 right now. If you divide 180 by 2.3, that's 78 pounds. That says that heifer can have a 78-pound calf or lighter without having calving problems. It's 30,000 calvings in this data table, and it's 80% accurate. I usually use 70 pounds as my cutoff, so that means for a 12 to 13-month-old heifer between 600 and 900 pounds, I need her to be at least 160 square centimeters in her pelvis. okay, for her to be able to have 170 pounds. That's kind of how I use it. If you've got that 1,000-pound yearling heifer with 150, that's a 64 5-pound calf. Not going to happen. Okay, so that's how we use pelvic areas. Of course, the main thing to manage for calving ease is to use bulls that are calving ease, that are highly accurate with calving ease direct EPDs. That's a different lecture. We got to have a plan for your 2-year-olds. All right. I'm just going to briefly touch this because this dives right into the stuff that I want to talk about on the farm. But the problems with 2-year-olds is they're anestrus. And so we've got to figure out a way to induce estrus or synchronize estrus in those 2-year-olds. It simply takes them 30 days longer. So we've got to do something to get them going. And we'll talk about each of these these 2 strategies, feeding MGA and putting the cedar device in. We won't really talk too much about short-term calf removal. I can handle that in the questions if somebody's interested. All right, so the last thing to check off is to plan the breeding season. All right, this is why Dr. Reinhardt wanted me here, and I spent 30 minutes talking about stuff that everybody knows to get to stuff that's kind of interesting. Okay, but planning the breeding season is vital for our ability to succeed. And Dr. Reinhardt, just lead us right into question number 2, if you're ready.
All right, I was answering some questions in the Q&A box. Let me pull this up. Question number 2. All right, does your breeding management include a controlled breeding and calving season or multiple controlled breeding and calving seasons if you manage separate herds? Yes or no question here. Got them coming in fast and furious. Does your breeding
have you ever explained to your public the main difference between a reproductive physiologist and the general public?
Well, I don't want to steal your answer. Go ahead. I have an answer too, maybe. If it's
we wash our hands before we go to the bathroom.
Yep, that's it.
Palpate,
Yep. Wash our hands before we do most anything. I tell you what, you've fallen in really well with falling in for Courtney's jokes here. Those are along the same lines, and yours are dad jokes, though, right?
Well, that's what happens when you get old, bro.
I know. I'm feeling it. All right.
Got my grandson coming to see me this week, so I'm pretty excited.
You blessed man. That's a fact. All right. I think we got everybody in, and I'm going to show you the results. So 61%. Their breeding management includes controlled breeding and calving season. That's
awesome. That's about 20% higher than what we have up here. So part of what we're going to talk about is our reproductive management plan. And this is, and I'm just talking about in Kentucky, and then I get in the United States in general, about 60% of all cattlemen have this plan. Got a bull, got a cow, get a calf. And that's really repro down to its nutshell, right? Down to the brass tacks. Bull plus cow equals calf. The problem is that it just doesn't happen always in a very efficient system so that we can profit. Okay? In 2004, some ag economists did some economic analysis of about 400 ranches in the Southwest. Now, I know that's not here. I understand that. It's not here. But one of the strengths of this is that ag economists did the research, not animal scientists, because animal scientists like me can be biased. I've managed farms. I've managed several farms along the way, actually, and I have developed a bias when it comes to long calving seasons and year-round calving. But economists really just think about one thing: money, right? Just money. That's what these economists think about. Their interest is the economic impact of management decisions. And so what they did was they took those 394 ranches and they had calving seasons all the way from 70 days to 365 days, and they had multiple of each. They wanted to look at what's the relationship between the length of the calving season and productivity and profitability. And what they found was that there's a positive relationship between the number of days of the breeding season and the cost of production. So the longer the breeding season, the more it costs you to produce a pound of beef. Actually, they expressed that as a cost per 100 pounds of calf, and it increased about a nickel a day per head. Okay? And on top of that, the pounds of calf weaned per year decreased 0.158 pounds per day. So that's a perfect system, right? Costs us more, generate less revenue. It's the Kentucky way. All right? Just to break these numbers down into something that's a little bit more palatable, year-round calvers sold 46 fewer pounds of calf per cow per year at a cost of $14 more per hundredweight. And it's more of a pain in the rear. Okay? Tom Troxell at the University of Arkansas just had 6 farms. They were all year-round calvers, and it took him 3 years in most cases. In 1 year, it took one farm, it took 5 years to transition all of those to one 90-day calving season. Great thing about Tom is he kept track of all the economics, how much it cost, how much revenue was generated from calf sales. Before to after, before is listed here, after listed to the right. As you can see, as calving season decreased, the percentage of cows that calved when he wanted them to increase. The total calving percentage didn't change. Herd break-evens were 2/3, okay, 2/3 lower. Specified cost per animal unit was nearly half, and income over specified cost was double. Okay. Specified costs was just out-of-pocket costs. Everything you can think of as far as an out-of-pocket cost of feed, vet, labor, etc. Okay. Per animal unit, which is 1,000 pound cow-calf pair. Okay. So productivity increased, profitability increased by getting hold of that calving season. And what really the data shows is if we want to be profitable, we got to have our cows calve in less than 90 days. We need our cows to get pregnant greater than 90%. We need to minimize calf death loss to less than 2% so that the percent of our cows that wean a calf exceeds 88%. If you look at all the economic data, your high profit producers are 88% and above percent of their cows that wean a calf. So how do we get there? We got to understand the problems and what's reasonable to overcome, figure out the tools we have, develop a plan, and then stick to it. Well, our main tool is culling, right? You'd be amazed at how much better your cows produce when you get rid of the junk. That one of the things when I come in, and we're going to go through cow data here pretty quick, one of the things one of the main things we do is we get rid of the junk cows. Old cows, bad teeth, bad feet, bad udders, bad disposition, or just plain bad cows. Get rid of them. The second tool we use is we synchronize estrus. Okay, and I'm talking mainly about synchronized estrus for natural service. We'll also synchronize for AI, but we either feed MGA or put a cedar device in for 7 days before we turn the bull out. I'm sure all of you are familiar with MGA. It's an oral feed additive. When fed at 0.5 milligram per head per day, effectively gives a cow a functional CL. Okay, it's 5 times less potent than cedar. As long as you can get the cows to consistently eat it, it's a very effective hormone treatment. Of course, the cedar device, that's this thing right here, is a T-shaped plastic device coated in progesterone. When inserted in the cow's vagina, the body fluids soak up the natural hormone, and when you pull that cedar 7 days later, that simulates in the brain the end of the cycle, and estrus typically occurs 3 to 5 days later. Just some data on about 2,000 cows where we fed MGA or put a cedar device in. got higher pregnancy rates and shorter calving windows. This is the percent of cows that calved in the first 30 days dramatically increased. We use bull to cow ratios from 1 to 23 all the way to 1 to 42. So, and what we found on tens of thousands now since this is that you really don't need to change bull to cow ratio. That kind of blows people's minds, but as long as you use a mature bull that's had experience and passes a BSE, we don't have any trouble. Just to give you some idea of some small returns on investment, just had 108 cows here. Half of them got MGA, half of them got corn. 15% increase in pregnancy rate. Those calves were 40 extra pounds at weaning because they were older. At that time, it only cost us $3 a cow for MGA. It's about $7 now. But here's the difference in our returns. Even, and this was done 17, 18 years ago, even in, okay, it was $150 to $200 per cow return. So our two main problems then are year-round calving and long calving seasons, okay? And these are farms that were taken straight out of our farm program, and we're going to talk about how to implement and how to work each one of these. Farm on the left is a year-round calver, calved over a 342-day window at 17 cows, a little smaller than normal here. I mean, 25, 26 is normal in Kentucky, but you can see he weaned 13 calves out of those 17 cows. This farm, 32 cows. He drug on to just between 4 and 5 months here. Okay. Did a little better job with his overall pregnancy rate and calving rate. But doggone, man, hey, it's hard to get a good weaning group when you're calving over a 5-month window. So how do we correct these things? What do we do? Okay, and that's really what I'm going to try to go over here in the next several slides. Okay, this is the first example of the year-round calver. First thing we did, if you want to get control of the calving season, you got to get rid of the bull. Pull the bull. That cow, we were working in March. Okay, that cow was pregnant. We kept her. She calved in January. We kept her. The next year she calved in December. After she calved here and we weaned that calf, we sold her. Okay. Those cows we held for fall breeding. Those cows we held for fall breeding. We did sell one of them. When these two November cows, one of them we kept. We put a cedar in her for 7 days and turned her out with a bull. Sold both of those cows. Sold both of those cows. 6 done cows, bought 2 replacement heifers, did fixed time AI to this group, okay, because the guy wanted to incorporate AI, and this is what we did in the first year. Yeah, we're down 4 cows, okay, but now in 1 year, we're in a manageable situation. We've gotten to a 60-day window. Actually just lost 1 calf. This cow was open, didn't calve. We didn't sell her. I wanted him to sell her, but he didn't. Okay, added 5 replacement heifers. These 2 late calving cows, we put a cedar in for 7 days, 2 weeks after they calved, and turned the bull out. Subjected all of them to fixed time AI. And this is what happened the 3rd year. Now we're down to a 46-day window. Had 2 open cows. 1 calf that died. Sold the 2 opens this time because one of them was the same open cow from before. He's doing pretty well, so now he's starting to buy more cattle. 1 cow had twins. So the next year subjected them all to fixed time AI again. The main reason I'm dragging through this is to show you that if you do all the things, you mix the ingredients like we talked about. For the most part, you can get and maintain a very low calving window. We've maintained it here at 48 cows. We had 3 cows that didn't calve this year. Okay. Those 3, we actually had 100% preg rate when we finished. Had 3 cows that aborted. Okay. We were just vaccinating these cows pre-breeding. We're not vaccinating them mid-gestation. So we picked that up the next year. Okay. And in 2019, you can see that we were able to manage some of that. I just was on that farm today, okay? And he had 2 more cows that ultrasounded pregnant that aborted. We did end up picking up a vaccination, so we're probably going to end up picking up 1 more, okay? So we went from 342 days, and we have maintained for 5 years less than a 60-day season. All of our cows calving in a very tight window, and even though we've got a small number of cows, we're able to put together pretty decent little marketing groups and improve the productivity and profitability of this cow herd. Okay, just to give you an idea of productivity, just total pounds of calf weaned, we went from 5,281 to 10,724. Now, I totally get that we've got 6 more cows calving, but that doesn't account for doubling productivity. The reason we have more cows is because now life is easier on the guy. He was considering getting rid of the cows altogether. Now they're making him money. Okay? Let's go to the next example. Kind of running out of time. I alluded to this on the marketing advantage. Not only did we increase productivity, but we increased market value. He's able to put 6 or 7 steers and heifers together in market groups, and he's actually seen his market value increase. This is data that Kenny Burdine, our ag economist, collected in its feeder calf sales here in Kentucky. The difference between selling a single and selling 5 or 10 light calves here in Kentucky is quite considerable. 5 light calves in one lot brought $11 more 100. 10 light calves brings 15 more 100. So even the small producers can take advantage of marketing in slightly bigger lots. Here's the 32 cow group that was calving over a longer window than what we wanted. We're going to talk about either doing a just natural service or natural service with AI. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is to sort your cows in management groups. One is easy, okay? Your easy breeders are your mature cows that are calving early. So these cows calving in September and August. You got your hard breeders, which are these cows right here, these 9 in October. All right, and all your 2-year-olds. We're going to handle those a little differently. Then you got your very hard breeders, which are your really late calvers. Okay, and we'll talk about each one of those groups. Just some data that we collected on farms here, separating cows like this. Okay, so our early cows, so the easy cows. Okay, we have a very high pregnancy rate and a very high percent calve in the first 30 days if they're non-treated. Our late cows, when we treat them like what we talk about, we have equal conception rate and equal calving in the first 30 days. Okay, so this is just turning them out with a bull. This is treating them the way we're going to talk about. Our first calf heifers, we treat all the calvers like they're late calving cows with pretty good success. And I'll show you with some of these very late calving cows how we're able to really get those rascals going. This is a project that I know, Justin, you and I talked about quite a bit. Where over the last 5 years, we've got 177 mature cows that were at least body condition score 5 on 19 different farms. These cows were 2 to 4 weeks postpartum. So after calving, we put a cedar in them for 7 days, turn them out with a bull. We got 70% of them to calve in the first 30 days of the next year. And on average, we're shifting the calving date back 30 days. And just to give you, I went the wrong way. Sorry, folks. This gives you an example of what that does. So these 4 cows calved in April. Now we're shifting calving seasons here. This guy wants to calve February, March. So his April, May calvers are his late calvers. At the end of April, those 4 cows, we put a cedar in on May 14th, pulled it out on the 21st, turned them with a bull. At the end of May, we did the same thing. So these are cows that are calving in that 4th month of his calving season. Okay, 7 of the 8 we got to calve about 30 days earlier. One cow didn't read the book, Dr. Reinhardt, but you can't hardly be mad at her because she calved in a 365-day window.
Yeah, it's probably something you did. I think you didn't read it to her or something.
Well, yeah, I'm probably too busy that day. We got a tenfold return on our investment. Those seeders were costing us about $10 a pop, and we got $882 just in those additional revenue just in those 8 cows. So I want to reiterate, 2 weeks after calving, put the seeder in, leave the seeder in for 7 days, turn them out with a bull. You can advance breeding by 30 days. So for our easy cows, if all we're doing is turning the bulls out, don't worry about them. Don't treat them. Ain't broke, don't fix them. Our hard cows, these are our October calving cows and all your 2-year-olds. Either put a seeder in or feed them MGA from the 23rd to the 30th, turn them out with a bull on December the 1st. And I'm just using these dates as examples. You can adjust the dates however you want to fit your calving season. Our very hard cows. So these are cows that are calving right before or during the breeding season. So we got them in a different pasture. 2 weeks after they calve, put a seeder in them. Pull out 7 days later, turn them out with a bull. If you want to feed MGA, start MGA feeding at 3 weeks, feed it for 7 days, then turn them out with a bull. MGA is not as potent as a seeder. If you want to do fixed timed AI for your easy and hard cows, I highly recommend the 7-day co-sync with seeder. Not going to go through the system. For your very hard cows, you're not going to be able to AI them this year. Put the seeder in 2 weeks after they calve, leave it in for 7 days, turn them out with a bull. They'll move up 30 days next year. You can AI them next year. For yearling heifers, I like this system. I know Dr. Reinhardt still uses the 7-day breed at 54 hours. This is what I use. I love it. You can, the 5-day seeder. You could feed MGA. I mean, if you want to use natural breeding, feed MGA or put a seeder in for 7 days right before you turn the bull out too. I do highly recommend AI in your yearling heifers because you're able to use that high accuracy, high calving ease EBD bull. What do I do with the bull? Build a pen. Okay, high tensile fence is going to run you $2 a foot right now, plus or minus. You can lease a bull, buy, sell a bull, or do some combination. This is just kind of real quick overview, and I'm gonna be wrapping up here pretty quick, Dr. Reinhardt, I promise you. Purchase price on the bulls between $2,000 and $5,000. Okay, and I'm jumping here to the cost per pregnancies. I'm gonna back up. All right, that's the salvage value. That's just the cost of keeping a bull. All right, just to keep him is about $600. The cost for your money is going to vary again, and so when you're looking at your total cost per year, it's going to vary by how much money you invested in that bull and how much it costs to keep him. When we look at our cost per pregnancies, sometimes those costs per pregnancies get a little bit higher than we think. If you're running 20 cows and spending $3,000 a bull, and you're only getting 80% preg rates, your cost per pregnancies are kind of high. Okay, and so the reason I bring that up is that you could buy a bull for $3,000, using, sell him for $1,800. You got $1,200 invested in your 20 cows, and your cost per pregnancies are actually a lot lower than keeping that bull the whole time. Kind of a weird thing to think about, because the tradition is we buy a bull, we keep him, and we sell him 3 or 4 years later, or maybe when we think he's worn out or whatever. There's some numbers that say that buying and selling bulls actually every year might not be a bad deal. And if you can lease a bull, I highly recommend you find a way to lease a bull. All right, that's it, Justin. 6 months, perform a BSE, vaccinate your cows, feed your cows, prepare your heifers, plan your 2-year-olds, and do something for the breeding season besides just turning the bulls out. Question number 3.
Question number 3. Let me cue that one up here.
If I take all the time you wasted at the beginning, I got done in an hour.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, no, we've got till 7, but do want to leave plenty of time for or till 8, I guess your time, but leave plenty of time for questions. Q&A here. Got some really good ones that came in. All right, so here's the third and final question. Due to this meeting, are you going to develop or improve your breeding management plan? If yes, when will you implement that plan? Immediately, in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months, within the next 2 to 3 years? I'm not planning to develop or improve my current one. So those are your choices. A little bit longer question and several more answers to choose from here. So I'll give you a little more opportunity to.
Have you talked about the 7-day cedar and really late calving cows much?
Yes, I've talked about it quite a bit. There was a question that came in about how early you can put that in. I think maybe you answered that as they were typing it in, but that's one of the things I wanted to bring back up with you and kind of go over. So.
I know you know the evolution of this because you might even have been here when we first started it. But, we were trying to AI a bunch of cows. And I don't pick and choose like some folks, right? We come onto a farm, you breed them.
That's right.
And some folks, sometimes cows don't calve like they're supposed to. That's just the way it is, right? And so we had some cows that were 7 days from calving. We went ahead and put a cedar in them. And you may have been here. I don't remember if you were here or not. But
yeah,
those son of a guns actually got pregnant. And it blew my hair back. And it wasn't just 2, we were talking about, several hundred cows treated total and a fairly nice population of really late calving cows, about 20% of them really that responded. And so that really is what started us in that going down that road. And then I was on another farm a year later and, they were so mixed. I mean, I'm going to say mixed up. I was preg checking and then we were deciding whether they were getting a cedar or not, and I got into some cows and I know you've palpated some of these really early postpartum cows, but you got to go in there and they're not pregnant, but they're also not normal. And you get in there and say, hey, Greg, the guy's name was Greg. I said, Greg, what's up with this cow? Oh, she calved last week. Became pretty apparent that probably ought to wait 2 weeks just to make sure that uterus is a little bit closer to normal. And so that's when we adjusted back to 2 weeks. And man, it's worked like a charm ever since.
Yeah. And, we've started, there's several folks I work with here in Tennessee that have started doing that, just either as a preliminary year to trying to tighten up enough so they can implement some other applied technologies like AI or, just the calving season in general, but just trying to get everything tightened up. And once they use it, it's just, it seems so easy and kind of like a no-brainer to do it. It just works so effectively. And I tell folks and I tell people in meetings like this that very rarely do we come across one of those things that just works effectively in most every situation. And it's so easy to talk about it. And it's one of those that's, since it's so rare to find something like that, I talk a lot about it and try to work it into about every repro talk I give.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. So,
all right, questions. We're sitting here gabbing and I'm not answering questions.
Yeah. So one thing that I'll mention, just kind of get your thoughts on, that's different about you and I, probably because I started out working with you, but I have thought about it independently enough that I would choose to go this route anyway. But neither one of us, I guess, get dogmatic about any of this stuff. You read in literature, okay, you're not supposed to start a cow on a synchronization program until she's 35 days postpartum. And then there's this whole list of things that are in the literature, and I'm all about having proven science behind everything, but it just doesn't always work like the book says whenever you're out in the world doing it. And that's, again, you breed and manage repro on I don't know how many thousand cows a year, and I do too here and in other states and countries. But when you're actually doing it, it's just not that easy, right?
No.
That's
Well,
just
you know why they have those numbers, right?
tell me.
That's CYA.
Oh, cover, yeah. Well, maybe that's what it comes down to. We don't really mind about that.
No, because you're sitting out there, and I know you do the same thing. You go, you work with folks, and if you go back when I was growing up and this stuff, AI wasn't as successful back then.
Right.
Wasn't it was tough back in the 70s and 80s, man, to get cows bred. And so you go out on a farm, you make promises, you sink and breed cows, and you get 20% preg. And, folks don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just wasted a whole lot of time and a whole lot of money. And, so a lot of those numbers are cover your butts.
Yeah.
So that if you wait till 45 days postpartum and you make sure that they're all in body condition score 5 and you do every little thing perfectly, it's a risk management deal.
Yeah.
Well, they're not going to fire me. They're not going to fire you. And I might have people mad at me for a little bit, but not for long.
Yeah.
So, it's just too many situations where you got to actually work in not the ideal world and work in the real world. Because sometimes science and reality just they just don't go together.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's a bad way of putting that.
I know what you're saying.
The science is applicable. It's just.
So here's the way I think about it.
Maybe theory and reality are not the same. Maybe that's the way I ought to say it.
Yeah. So this is my fancy way of saying this, probably not right, but so equilibrium is merely a matter of time and scope, right?
Absolutely.
I can look at any one thing and I see a 30% time to AI pregnancy rate, and that looks really bad. But if I look at that as the cows that didn't breed AI, like 80% of them caught to the next service. And then next year when I go do time to AI, I'm at 65% at that same herd. It's the problem. I think that's the problem is we don't give it enough time and scope, and it's just we don't play the long game enough. And anything worth doing in life, whether it's managing reproduction on cows or raising kids or whatever, is you're going to lose some of the immediate stuff. And sometimes you have to go without the immediate gratification. But in the long run, working toward it diligently is where it gets you to fewer of those bad licks, right?
Yep. And, one of the deals too that separates me from a lot of my colleagues and you, I think you too, I could give a rat's rear end if a cow's AI or not. If the producer is in long game theory and their goal is to improve the overall biological efficiency of their herd over the long term, AI is incredible. But if it's year to year and you're just paying bills, sink them. AI, the AI component is not repro. The AI component is genetics. The repro component is synchronization. And there's not one single beef female that I deal with that we don't synchronize in some way, shape, or form. Because getting her in heat on that first day of the breeding season is the most important thing you can do for that cow.
Yeah. Well, and maybe to that point, I had a call today from a veterinarian and was working with a producer, and they were AIing cows, and they synchronized them, and they bred on heat, and there was, maybe 20% of them that hadn't shown heat, and they were three days out from pulling the cedar and giving loot. and they weren't going to breed them, and called me and said, "What do you usually do with those? How do you resync them?" I was like, "Breed them right now and give them a shot of GnRH." That's why we do time day eyes, because you'll get some of them pregnant. And if you don't, the bull will catch them quicker. I mean, that's why we did the whole thing. So it's things like that. I'm not, I could make my pregnancy rate look great if I just bred the ones that came in heat. But I'm not just looking at that year or that season. I'm looking at what happens next year and when the grandkids get the herd or whatever. It has to be a year over year kind of an approach, especially with reproductive management. Hey, one question that came up, and I'm gonna I'll put words in your mouth, but you tell me if I'm wrong. So you were talking about heifers and heterosis and crossbreeding, talking about using back in the day some old continental genetics. You weren't talking about modern times, right? We can still find.
Yeah, I'm talking about 1970s when I was calving cows out.
Mm-hmm.
When we didn't have EPD. EPDs weren't even available till 82. And so, I mean, yeah, I'm talking about back. I'm older than I look. I know you know that. Yeah. But back when we were trying to tie cows to a tree and use a jack to pull a Simmental cross calf out of a British cow when there were no EPDs. And I mean, back then the continentals were way different. It's not the same now.
Yeah.
We live in a calving ease world, man. Yeah. Folks really don't know what it's like. And I know I've told you this story because it's one of my favorite stories of all time. But my brother, my dad, and I was about 12 or 13. We were sitting in it was the mid-70s. We were sitting in an extension meeting in Northeast Missouri. And the genetic specialist, John Massey, was there giving us a talk. And he made the comment, if you're not pulling 20% of your cows, you're not using a big enough bull. And Dad said, looked down at it, he said, boys, we're leaving. And he never went to another extension meeting because we spent too much time. It's just not, that's not the way it is now. We live in a calving ease world. And it's been incredible for the beef industry. Yeah. To get to where we are, to have the EPDs, the accuracies that we have, and the Calving Ease genetics that we have is really. If we would have had that back then, well, we had it. We just thought we needed weaning weight from the continentals, but we lost a lot of calves back in the day, bro.
Yeah, that's a lot of sleep too, I'd say. So, you talked about the managing the bulls for a calving season, and I might have been typing an answer to a question if you mentioned this and I missed it. But one of the biggest issues for most of us and most folks we work with is what do we do with the bull at the end of the breeding season? One of the questions on here made me think about another approach that I use. Ask how long should I leave the bulls with the cows, if I'm looking at a 60-day calving window. And then I had another question about from someone who was using a bull on 2 breeding seasons, the fall and the spring, on just 2 different herds of cows. And I'm fine, and I've seen it work quite a bit, where you leave the bull in there a lot longer than what you want your calving season to be, just so you have somewhere to put him.
Preg check.
Just preg check. And that's the other thing. I talk a lot, just like you did, and I always do on having a calving season. But other than that, the other thing that I really hammer on is just preg check. And it takes a little work. Anything worth doing takes a little work. But there's some cost to it. But I promise I've never seen a veterinarian charge more to preg check a cow than it's worth. And it's the same for BSE. I've seen cost all over the spectrum, and I've never seen it higher than what it's worth. So
every single year, Justin, I get at least 5 phone calls where a guy has, a whole set of 30 cows, 2 of them calved. What happened? Mm-hmm. Every year, man.
Yeah.
And every year, the bull's not getting her done. Didn't get her done. Yep. And you know what? Banker don't care.
Yep.
He don't care.
And here, I just saw another question come up here. That's a really good question. I appreciate the asking this question. So, and this goes back to the fact that, so you and I both will say some things that you might not hear other places, but we always have to encourage people to listen to all of it, because if you just take a piece of it, you can get yourself in a bind, right? So the question is, if 35 cows come into estrus on the same day, will a single mature bull get to all of them? No. And that's why we don't give shots with that. If you're synchronizing for natural service, you have a mature bull that's past a BSE, we're not giving injections. We do not want to tighten these up like we were time breeding them. If we tried to synchronize them like we were time breeding them for natural service, it would be really, really a train wreck. So that's, even though, we want to be able to do the most good we can by saying some stuff that other people might be too risk averse to say, we also have to encourage you to listen to everything that we say. So that, the answer to that question is no. You have to have the bull power right if we're going to synchronize for natural service.
The cedar or the MG, I mean, each of the drugs has their own purpose. The cedar or the MGA, and I'm going to treat them the same. They are for anestrus cows and anestrus cows alone. Mm-hmm. They don't do anything positive for a cycling cow. The shots are for cycling cows. And so when we're breeding a herd where we don't know which is which, we got to treat both. Mm-hmm. In our situation, what we're taught, we only care about the anestrus cows. I don't even want you treating the cycling cows if you're turning the bulls out, because it's a waste of time and money. Mm-hmm. Just identify those hard breeders or really hard breeders, treat them. That will ensure that you don't have issues with bull coverage. But a couple things to keep in mind. There is some data, not a lot, but some data. The average bull can breed 11 cows a day. Average bull can breed 11 cows a day. I have ultrasounded, preg checked in situations where I know a single bull has gotten over 20 pregnant in one day. Mm-hmm. Or, one very, very short window.
Always.
But the question always comes up: how many days in a row?
Right. I always talk about that old Toby Keith song. I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. You can't ask him to do that all year.
No, not every day.
Right.
Not every day. But yeah, that's a great point. Just the cedar and MGA, no shots.
Yeah.
That's by design, on purpose.
And now we are getting close to what I've tried to set is the hard time limit on here, Les. But I want to say thanks, man. I really appreciate you putting in work to put the presentation together, to come on here and talk to everybody in Tennessee. I always learn something new whenever you're speaking, and I hope everybody else on here, Dev, got some positive feedback in the chat and the Q&A. So again, just really appreciate you crossing the state line virtually, at least, and talking to us here in Tennessee. And I'll just
it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. I like it. I like this plan. We kind of turned it into a podcast here at the end almost, or something like that. But hopefully that everybody's gotten some good out of that. So this is our last webinar in the series, and I just tell everybody thanks for being diligent about signing on. It's really gone pretty smooth. I have to give most of the credit for that to Courtney, for setting all this up, making sure we had all the links ready and everything ready to go, all the speakers good. And just any kind of feedback that Courtney will be following up with everybody on an evaluation link, where you'll get a link to give your opinion on each of the speakers, the whole setup. And I'm very sincere when I say that we value your feedback, because if there was something that would make this better or easier for y'all watching at home, let us know, please. Because, if we can do it, we'll sure do it, because that's, that's our job. That's what y'all pay us to do. So appreciate all the agents, the UT Extension agents across the state who deliver the Master Beef Producer program in their county. They've been the go-between on getting the links to you guys and keeping everything held together. So we're a county-based system, and we couldn't do it without all those folks out there across the state doing all that hard work that they do to serve y'all in the local community. So I really appreciate that as well. So if you have anything else you need to get in contact with me or Courtney, please encourage you to do that. We'll have the recordings available. I think most all the other recordings are already available. And the slides, most of the slide sets are available to you now. We'll get the rest of those together and get those out to you. But if you don't know where any of that is, or you need some help finding it, I encourage you to contact your county agents, and if they need to, they'll get in contact with us. But with all that said, thanks again, Les. You got any parting words?
Appreciate it. Go get them bread, man.
Yeah, we decided, I think, on the last one that we needed a Bob Barker saying to wrap each of these up, like have your pet spayed or neutered. Maybe that deal that Ben puts on his background, and Courtney's used it some, keep your mind open, not your cows.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Thanks, Les. We'll talk to everybody later. Let us know if you need anything.
You bet. Thank you. This is fun.
It's good stuff. Hey, I'll holler at you when we're done here.